I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, all of you. I'm Lisa Guernsey, a longtime Alexandria resident involved in a number of things throughout the community, a board member for ACT, and I'm also the chair of the Community Investment Committee for ACT for Alexandria. Thank you all for coming to this morning. It's one of ACT's real superpowers to be able to bring together so many people, leaders across our city, in our nonprofits, to be able to share, reflect together, and be able to move forward together. So I'm really excited to be with you all to kick this off. I just want to note that we are recording this event, so now be aware that what's being said is being recorded, but we also want folks to be able to ask questions and to kind of really engage in dialogue. You're going to have some opportunity to hear from our leaders that ACT about some survey results and others that are going to help us understand what's really happening in our community. And we want people to feel free to share and talk as well. This is the 20th anniversary of ACT for Alexandria. It's been 2 incredible decades, and I've been involved in ACT for a good part of that time in various ways. And I just want to note that the support that ACT for Alexandria is able to give to nonprofits in our community is what's making us strong and resilient in some really unsettled times. Obviously, the COVID pandemic was one example of that, but now we're in another. And there's a lot of change afoot. There's a lot of uncertainty, and being able to come together like this and talk through what's happening in our community is so important. So and this is a follow-up. I guess many of you were here back in March, right, when we started this series. So thanks to many of you for coming back. This ability to be timely, back in March, to be like right there, is so important. And now several months have passed. There's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of unsettled feelings, but we're glad to be able to bring folks together. So I just want to introduce Heather and turn it over to her. Heather Peeler, as I think almost all of you know, is our CEO and president at ACT for Alexandria. Heather has been such an even-keeled steward, but also a creative partner across our community. And so to have both that creativity and that ability to think and be agile in times of uncertainty, and to be able to kind of provide us a sense of a foundation and stability, I mean, that's an amazing combination. So Heather, thank you for your leadership, and I'm going to turn it over to you now. So take it from here. Oh, we can't hear you, Heather.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for that very warm introduction, Lisa, and your kind words. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you this morning. So let's see. Before we jump into the conversation today, I just want to share a few guidelines for creating a comfortable and respectful environment where all ACT stakeholders, from our donors to our nonprofit partners, business leaders, and city partners and others, can build relationship and community. So first and foremost, we hope you'll be an active participant today. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. And throughout the conversation, I hope you'll use the chat to share your experiences, ask questions, and react to what you hear, as well as react to other people's comments. ACT team members will be in the chat also to answer any questions as well. I also encourage you to keep your video on if you're comfortable doing so, but also to keep your mic on mute. And while you are engaging in the chat, in order for our space today to feel supportive and inclusive, please refrain from any solicitation and from any partisan commentary. So today's conversation, as Lisa mentioned, builds on a program that we had in March. But don't worry, if you were with us in March, we're not going to repeat everything. We have a few additional details to share. And if you weren't with us in March, also don't worry, we'll quickly bring you up to speed on some of the things that we're seeing in the community and ways in which ACT is reacting and responding. So I'm going to provide a quick overview of our current context, and then I'll pass the mic to Brandy. We'll have some time for Q&A, but again, I encourage you to post questions along the way in the chat, and we'll wrap up with a few announcements. So let's dive in. So in our previous briefing, we talked about a triple threat that our community is facing right now. The reduction in federal spending through grants and contracts and direct services, reduction in the federal workforce, and changes in immigration policy and enforcement have created, I think, several concerns for our community. And since then, since last March, there's been an additional concern looming in terms of trade policy and additional economic uncertainty. And all of these things are combining not just to create the perfect storm, as they say, but are generally casting a shadow that affects nearly every aspect of our life in our community. I'm sure you've all read the headlines and are familiar with these challenges, but today we hope to go into a little bit more detail below the surface, particularly in terms of how these challenges are affecting folks on the ground here in Alexandria. So I cannot underscore how disruptive the current environment is to nonprofit sustainability. As I mentioned in March, federal funding is the #1 source of revenue for nonprofit organizations. And in 2023, the federal government invested $267 billion in grants and contracts to nonprofit organizations for them to deliver the critical services our communities need. Nationally, 2/3 of all nonprofits receive at least one government grant or contract. And human service organizations in particular rely on federal grants and contracts to fund the critical services that they provide in our communities every day. According to the Urban Institute, 55% of Alexandria's nonprofits would not be able to cover their expenses if they lost federal funding. Now, it's important to note that this figure includes all 501c3s in Alexandria, including many of the trade associations that make their home here. And in a few minutes, Brandy is going to provide more specific insights on the impact that the federal funding cuts may have directly on the nonprofit organizations that directly serve our residents in Alexandria. The funding that the federal government provides to nonprofits is only part of the equation. The federal government also provides direct support to individuals through programs like Medicaid, which offers healthcare, SNAP, which is food assistance, TANF, which is financial assistance, Section 8 vouchers, which address housing needs, and tax programs like the Earned Income Tax Credit. And those are just a few examples of the many critical programs that the government provides directly. Just to give you a sense of scale of this investment in our communities, I looked at a few specific programs from 2023. And these together totaled to more than $800 billion. That's Medicaid, SNAP, Section 8, TANF, and Head Start. I want to note by comparison that total philanthropic giving, so that's from all foundations, individuals, that total companies, that totaled $557 billion. And it's important to note of that, only 1/5 went to human service organizations. So as we consider some of the challenges and the potential loss in federal funding, it is unlikely that the private sector, that private philanthropy will be able to make up the difference. So what do these changes mean for our community here in Alexandria? Or what do these programs, I should say, mean for our community here in Alexandria? As I shared in March, about 12,000 Alexandrians receive SNAP benefits. And again, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It provides funding directly to people to buy the food that they need. As you can see, participation rates have steadily increased since COVID. Oops, sorry, go back. We also know that about 15,000 Alexandrians participate in Medicaid, which is represented by the dark blue line on this chart. It has also steadily increased over the years. The budget bill that was recently approved by the House and is currently being debated by the Senate proposes significant cuts to SNAP and to Medicaid. In addition, the president's budget also cuts spending. For example, his proposal calls for the elimination of funding for the Section 8 housing voucher program, in addition to other critical programs. Now, granted, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the budget. We'll be finding out, I think some information this week and more in the weeks to come. But assuming some version of the House bill becomes final, the impact of these cuts may be felt pretty quickly, likely starting this fall. Another storm cloud that we are experiencing is the elimination of federal jobs. So 130,000 employees have already been laid off or taken buyouts. And the Trump administration has announced eliminating another 150,000 positions. As we shared during our last briefing, the federal workforce is a significant component of Alexandria's workforce. About 22% of Alexandrians work for the federal government, which is slightly higher than our region as a whole. And it's also important to note that this figure does not include people who work for contractors, which again are part of the federal ecosystem. I want to note that the median earnings for a federal worker in Alexandria is $130,000 a year. That means 50% of federal workers earn less than $130,000. In March, we talked about the survival budget for a family of four in the city of Alexandria. The city government has calculated that it takes an income of about $120,000 to afford the basics of housing, food, childcare, healthcare, transportation, and so on. So when you put these two numbers against each other, I think the reality is that many former federal workers are on the precipice of significant financial hardship. We are eager to understand how the federal layoffs are impacting our local unemployment rates, and the data is just starting to come in. Data from the Brookings Institute shows that unemployment in the Washington region is growing. From April 2024 to April 2025, unemployment in Alexandria increased by 1.4%, compared to 0.9% in the region and 0.4% nationally. So again, I think we're just starting to see some of the effects of the reduction in the federal workforce. Unemployment is anticipated to increase in the summer and September, which is the timeline for the federal workers who accepted the fork in the road offer, and also when additional layoffs are expected with the new FY26 budget. Anecdotally, we hear from our colleagues at the city's workforce development program that they are seeing an increase in white-collar job seekers. They are noting that white-collar job seekers have different needs compared to people who have historically sought unemployment support. Thus, programs will not only need to respond to increased demand, but they will also need to find ways to modify programs to address the distinct needs of different constituencies. A third factor influencing our community is immigration policy, and this is a bit more difficult to quantify. Last March, we shared information about the diversity of our community, and I think the statistic that still stays with me is the fact that 51% of children in Alexandria have a foreign-born parent. And so Alexandria is in the crosshairs as a welcoming community, as a community that has had open arms for immigrants and refugees. We are under the spotlight in a new way. Aggressive enforcement has also impeded individual rights and is causing residents to withdraw from civic life. And speaking with the staff at Northern Virginia Legal Services, they shared that the degree of fear for many immigrant families is crippling. Families are not showing up for eviction proceedings, and crimes are going unreported. So in sum, the threats that residents are experiencing and the threats to our nonprofit community that is trying to support them continue to grow, and we are all rightfully worried. So I'm going to pause here and give you a chance to weigh in. I know I've shared a lot of information, but I'm hoping we can launch a poll. Denise, if you can get that started. We'd love to hear from you. What of the issues that I've just mentioned and briefly touched upon are most concerning to you? Is it immigration, the effects of the federal workforce, reduction in benefits in federal programs? What is most concerning for you as you think about our community right now and in the future? I'll give folks a few minutes or a few seconds, excuse me, to respond to the poll. I see concerns around nonprofit capacity, concerns around immigration and deportation. Okay, it looks like most folks have had a chance to weigh in. Let's go ahead and close the poll, if we will, Denise. Thank you. So it looks like immigration and deportation and the effects on the nonprofit community and fundraising challenges are top of mind. And again, we share those concerns, and we'll be talking a little bit about how ACT is mobilizing to address them. Okay. So as we consider how we might respond to this current environment, it may be helpful to look at past events and crises to help us prepare for the months and years ahead. And so I thought it would be interesting to look back at the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Over a 5-year period, we saw that poverty and participation in federal programs increased pretty significantly. And this data comes from the Commonwealth Institute. As with the recent COVID pandemic, the 2008-09 recession further exposed the inequalities that exist in our community. Communities of color had disproportionate outcomes and were impacted more acutely in Alexandria and across the state of Virginia. One thing that is different about the 2008 recession and the recent COVID pandemic compared to today is that the federal government stepped in with resources and support. Programs like SNAP and TANF were increased, unemployment insurance was extended, the earned income tax credit was expanded, and so there were additional supports that the federal government was providing. And while there were many hardships faced by our neighbors and folks throughout the region, the DC region in general fared a little bit better relative to other parts of the country due to the strength of the federal government as an employer. The federal government as an employer has always provided kind of a stabilizing force in our community to help us weather economic downturns. As we seek to learn from the past, I think it is also an opportunity for us to learn from other communities. The Washington metropolitan region is not the only community that has faced monumental challenges and shifts to its local economy. What lessons might we learn, for example, from Rust Belt communities like Pittsburgh or Flint, and how they navigated shocks to their economy? One example that our team has been interested in learning from is from Charlotte, North Carolina. Like the Washington region, Charlotte is a prosperous region, and its economy has steadily grown. Before the financial crisis in 2008, nearly 8% of the workforce in Charlotte was employed by the financial industry. And Charlotte was the home of 8 bank headquarters. After the 2008 crisis, there was obviously a reduction in the number of headquarters, and the local economy really took a hard hit. The local economy in Charlotte did eventually recover. And again, now the community, the business community and the region economically is continuing to grow. And in fact, more people work now in the financial sector in Charlotte than they did in 2008. So they've really been able, I think it's a great story of recovery that our region can certainly learn from. But when you go below the surface, there are also some interesting lessons around equality and economic opportunity that I think would be really important for our community as we think about how we will make it through the next few years. Unfortunately, in Charlotte, many people who bore the brunt of the recession did not see their lives improve for many years. Poverty peaked in Charlotte at 18% in 2012, and that was 4 years after the initial crisis. So I think this indicates that we need to really be thinking not just about how we support our community right now, but how we need to look to the coming years. And as we think about the future of our community and the region, I think an important question is how do we make sure that immigrants, people of color, and low-income Alexandrians are part of the strategy for growth and prosperity? In a few weeks, Brandy and I, along with some colleagues from city government, will be participating in a meeting with community foundations from around the country where we will be discussing strategies for economic mobility. A team from the Community Foundation of the Carolinas will be at that gathering, and we're looking forward to spending some time with them and learning a little bit more about their experience during the 08-09 recession and insights that we can bring back to our community. Now, I know this information is sobering and very concerning, but I also have some reason for hope. And so this photo is from a poster I saw when I was on vacation a few years ago, and I snapped a picture. And I don't exactly remember why it spoke to me at that moment, but it definitely speaks to me now. Our nonprofit organizations are here in Alexandria, and the nonprofit leaders at the helm are experts at adapting. We saw that during the COVID pandemic. I think adaptation is part of the definition of what it means to be a nonprofit right now. We have navigated challenging storms in the past, and our collective grit and compassion has helped us in the past and will certainly be essential as we move forward. And I believe this moment is calling for something more. I don't think we can count on federal funding and federal jobs returning to where they were in 2024. So we have to be thinking about a future that looks very different from where we were just a few months ago. And if we use this metaphor of sailing, I think that means we might need a different kind of boat to get us through. And so I think a question is, how do we use this moment not to preserve what currently is, but how do we re-envision the human service systems so that they work better for our community, that are more systems and programs that are more rooted in human dignity, equality, and justice. We saw a lot of innovation during the pandemic, and I think this is another opportunity for us to innovate. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides here and ask you a few questions. Have a poll. I'm sure you have been moved by what you I'm sure you've been moved by what you are seeing in the community, and I'm curious to hear how you are taking action. So as a donor, what changes are you considering to your charitable giving in light of today's context? And so Venice, if you can launch that poll, thank you. Have you thought about how you may be adjusting your giving? I'll give folks a few seconds to respond to the poll. And it looks like most people so far are either increasing their giving or not making any changes. Okay, I think we'll close the poll here. Thank you, Venice. So it looks like some folks are not making any changes. Some folks are increasing, and only a few folks are decreasing. If you selected other, I'd love to understand a little bit more about that. And perhaps in the chat, you can share a little bit more about what you're thinking about how you are adjusting your philanthropic giving. Okay, now I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Brandy Yee, our Chief Program Officer, who's going to share some more specific data about what we're hearing from local nonprofit leaders here in Alexandria. So Brandy, we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Heather. So as you all heard Heather kind of share, supporting Alexandria nonprofits really, and the sector as a whole, really is core to the work that we do here at ACT. We've been very intentional about our communication with nonprofits as we really want to hear from them what's happening on the ground, knowing that things are changing week by week and sometimes day by day. So, as Heather said, nonprofits are really resourceful and they're doing everything that they can to sustain the services that they provide to the community. We also know that they're feeling overwhelmed, and this is just the beginning. With these uncertain times, we may not see the full impacts until next year and beyond. So, earlier this month, in partnership with our local government partners at the Department of Community and Human Services and the Alexandria Council of Human Service Organizations, we surveyed Alexandria CEOs and executive directors to better understand the impacts of these federal funding cuts, the financial position that nonprofits are in, any external changes to the services that they're providing, and internal impacts on their operations related to staffing and volunteers. We did this initial survey in February and reported on our findings in March. And so we did another one earlier this month, and I'm going to talk about the most recent findings from the 45 organizations that completed the survey. And so we can go on to the next slide. So in this slide, we see some of the federal funding themes. So 44% of the responding nonprofits receive federal funding, and that is either direct or pass-through funding. For 55% of those federally funded nonprofits, that funding makes up less than 25% of the organization's overall budget. But for 30% of those nonprofits, federal funding makes up 25 to 49% of their budget, which is a big amount. We also heard from 7 nonprofits who have already lost federal funding. And as you can see on the slide, these are pretty significant losses for some of them. 66% of nonprofits receiving federal funds anticipate losing those funds. And if that happens, they will have to either discontinue the services that they provide, or if they do continue, they'll have to do that at a reduced level. And I think, as you'll see in the later comments, they're seeing an increase in the need. So this is kind of that perfect storm. If we go to the next slide, we did hear from nonprofits just about what they were seeing. So federal policies are having an impact on community members served by nonprofits. One organization shared, "We have seen lower attendance for our adult programs as some beneficiaries have changed their schedules to minimize contact with immigration authorities." On the next slide, we'll see another quote from another nonprofit that says, "We've seen a reduction in in-person parent engagement on site at classrooms." This was also reiterated through a conversation with a member of ACT's Youth Council who shared that fellow students were fearful of showing up at school. And for those who are going to school, many of them are caring for a sibling and picking them up from school since parents don't feel comfortable being in public spaces. Another organization shared that students from mixed families are not wanting to complete the FAFSA application for fear of being targeted. By not completing the form, these students won't qualify for financial aid and may end up not pursuing higher education opportunities. Okay, next slide. The federal policies are not the only things that are having impact on nonprofits' ability to serve the community. Or sorry, they are having impacts, but 57% report that having to remove language or changing service delivery due to diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are having an impact. 68% of organizations are seeing an increase in demand for services. And when we asked them back in February, it was only 41% who were reporting a need, are seeing an increase in need. And we asked or probed a little bit further, that increase in the demand was for food and emergency financial assistance. 30% of organizations have seen a reduction in participation or attendance in their programs and services, and some of that might be explained by what I shared in the earlier quotes. When we asked that question back in February, 25% of nonprofits were seeing a reduction in participation. With all of these changes and uncertainties, 78% of nonprofits reported that they're engaging in scenario planning around these uncertainties, and 22% are implementing or anticipating reductions in their staff. So we also asked nonprofits to talk about their financial reserves. And the good news is 80% of nonprofits have reserves, but that also means that 20% of them do not. And of the organizations with reserves, 48% of them report that they have less than 6 months of operating expenses. So, what do nonprofits need? So, in the survey, we also asked them to rank kind of their top 3 supports that would be helpful to them at this time and wanted to make sure that you are aware of them. So, number 1, fundraising. Obviously, with the loss of federal dollars and the uncertainty about the future among donors and seeing the increase in demand, there are concerns about how to fill the gaps and where these dollars are going to come from. Communications. Nonprofits are always looking for ways to better tell their story, to communicate their impact. They're also trying to figure out how do they communicate what is needed at this critical time, and also how internally and with their communities that they're serving, how do they address some of the misinformation that is spreading. And then finally, staff well-being. I think we've heard this in previous conversations, and some of our grants have helped to support this, is that many are worried about staff well-being. Many staff members reflect the targeted populations. They may be immigrants or LGBTQ plus identify with that community, or communities of color. They might have family members who are losing their federal jobs or at risk of losing their jobs. These staff are carrying the weight of that personally and professionally, and they're being asked to do more with less, and they're experiencing burnout. Now, I know all of this can sound really daunting and overwhelming, but I do want to share some bright spots and highlight some things that have been happening in Alexandria and in our community here at ACT since our last stakeholder briefing. So, one, thank you for all of you who participated in Spring to Action, Alexandria's Giving Day. It was a huge success and also very timely. Many of you supported your favorite nonprofits during this event, and you also looked for new ones to support based on some of the needs that you heard. The generosity of our community was really on full display, and we had a record-breaking $3.1 million raised for the 193 organizations that were participating. There was a lot of uncertainty about what that was going to look like, and we were just thrilled with your response. And so thank you for those who gave and supported, and thank you for the nonprofits, again, for all the work that you did in the campaign. We also want to highlight our ACT Donor Advised Fund holders. They gave more than ever this year, providing more than $700,000 in matching and challenge grants to leverage additional giving, and they also provided day of gifts. Our youth are doing incredible things, and so there is a lot of hope for our future. Our youth council hosted its annual symposium with more than 50 attendees who were eager to learn about what the students were finding out around substance abuse, access to healthcare, and housing affordability from the youth perspective. We also hosted a training with 25 participants led by Whitney Parnell of Service Never Sleeps. And this training outlined ways to adopt an ongoing posture of learning, growth, and action in community with other people who are committed to racial justice and allyship. We at ACT have also been using our voice and focusing on collaboration with Northern Virginia funders. Heather moderated the opening plenary session on Meeting the Moment, Philanthropy's Role in a Time of Change at the Virginia Funders Network Conference. At that same conference, I also facilitated a panel on philanthropy's role in policy and advocacy during a time of change. We're also continuing to meet with our colleagues at the Northern Virginia Community Foundation and Arlington Community Foundation to think about creative ways we can collaborate and serve nonprofits across the region. Now, what are we doing in response, and how are we serving Alexandria nonprofits? Like Heather shared, while there are some similarities to the pandemic, there are also some unique differences in our current context. The relationship between the social safety net and the government has been disrupted, and it's unlikely that federal investment in the social safety net will return to previous levels. So like Heather said, we need to envision a different future with different possibilities. We need to think about new models, new partnerships, new revenue strategies, and new ways of working together. And so the Alexandria Community Support or Community Initiative builds off of ACT's commitment to amplify the work of the community by bringing people and resources together. Our response will align and continues to align with our strategic priorities of supporting the economic well-being of Alexandrians and really looking at how we can support the nonprofit community and the sector. We're building off of our strengths as a community foundation, and this includes convening, grant making, communications, and advocacy. So in the next slide, let's go ahead and dive deeper, a little bit deeper into what that means. So one, convening. This really is a core to what we do. We hosted our first in-person gathering of nonprofit CEOs and executive directors in March, and we're building future gatherings off of what we heard from what leaders said that they needed. Collaboration and partnerships was at the top of the list. Our nonprofits are thinking about how they can provide services in this different paradigm, and that means thinking differently about how they do business. This could mean strategic prioritization, mergers, ending programs so that they can invest in others or continue others in a different way. And they're also thinking about earned income and other different business models to help bring revenue to their nonprofit. We want to make sure that we're highlighting all of the different ways that nonprofits could make some changes during this time. So we plan to host a panel discussion for CEOs, executive directors, and also their board members to talk through these ideas and what's needed to continue this conversation. We're also in conversation with our colleagues at the Arlington Community Foundation and Northern Virginia Community Foundation to host this as a regional event. With the Community Resource and Resilience meetings, we're partnering with the Alexandria Department of Community and Human Services, known as DCHS, to organize and lead these bi-weekly meetings. These meetings are comprised of staff across the local government, nonprofit, and faith-based sectors. We're seeing anywhere between 30 to 50 participants at each virtual meeting, and they really offer a place to talk about trends and what's going on, how organizations are navigating these changes that are coming at them. These meetings are great for newer staff to connect and learn about all of the resources that are available. And there's also time for information sharing about programs and services and really helping to make that direct connection for who to go to for more information. I can give you a quick example of something that was shared at the last meeting. In response to questions and fears in the community about immigration, the assistant police chief came to talk, and he came to hear from nonprofits about what their concerns are and share what the police department was doing to build and maintain trust with residents. One participant recently shared how valuable these meetings are to her. She said it's a reminder that she's not alone in this work, and this is a common refrain that we hear from leaders. We also want to think about how can we vision or reimagine things for our community. We would love to partner with an organization called Future Good to host a collective future visioning session with nonprofit partners to reimagine the sector and new ways of working together to serve our community. There are also learning conversations that we want to have with other cities similar to Charlotte, whose lessons learned from past crises and times of uncertainty can help us think about how we can reimagine Alexandria. We'll also continue to host these stakeholder briefings. We're committed to sharing what we're learning and what we're hearing, kind of like what we're doing today. And we want to make sure that you as donors and community members are aware of the emerging needs. And once we start awarding grants, we want to make sure that we're sharing the impact of your donations. Next, we have grant making. This is really core to what we've been doing. And we want to make sure that we can focus on capacity building grants, something that we've been committed to since our foundation began 20 years ago. We want to equip nonprofits for the future and ensure that they have what they need to navigate these challenges and that they're in a position of strength moving forward. When we talk about communications, we have a platform called Connected Alexandria. This is a technology platform that the ACT staff is managing, and it really helps to coordinate timely and accurate communication and share important information across sectors. So I told you about the meeting that we had. A lot of resources are shared, and so we want to make sure all of these resources are actually in one place. Imagine all of the busyness that you as a nonprofit are going through, and you're trying to find that flyer or information about that webinar that someone shared. We're putting that all in one place. There are currently 50 participants from 39 different organizations participating, and we're looking to reach even more. So if you're a nonprofit on this call right now and you are not part of it, we encourage you to reach out. We want to make sure that you're part of that network. We've heard from nonprofit staff about the importance of having a place to access those resources. And examples of some of those resources that have been shared include an immigration Q&A for service providers and volunteers hosted by Just Neighbors, job fairs for former federal workers and contractors, and also Know Your Rights workshops. And finally, advocacy. We really want to use our voice to advocate for the needs of our community members and for the nonprofits to the broader Alexandria community, but also to have communication lines open with our local, state, and federal elected officials. If you follow us on social media, which is another plug to follow us, we've been using our social media channels to build awareness and understanding about the impacts, most recently about the tax reconciliation bill and what that will mean, what some of those proposed changes will mean on our local community. We've also gotten responses from these posts. We've seen an increase in engagement on LinkedIn. Again, another plug to connect with us. And then again, we're also participating in regional and other funder tables to highlight the needs of Alexandrians and make the case for increased charitable giving here in Alexandria. We want to look for ways that we can join our voices to the whole Northern Virginia philanthropic sector. And one thing we've been talking about is the possibility of hosting an advocacy workshop so we can provide tools and resources for nonprofits to better understand what they can and can't do. So we know that things are constantly changing and new needs are emerging, so we may have different phases of support during this time. But we are really committed to making decisions based on listening and learning and sharing what we're hearing from our nonprofit leaders, city leaders, and residents. The initiative that I just shared with you embraces innovation. We really want to invest in leadership, making sure that we're engaging in the wisdom of community members and looking for ways that we can foster new partnerships. So again, thank you for listening to all those things. We hope that you will continue to partner with us in this work. And now I want to turn it back to you all to ask a question. We would love to hear from you. How can we engage more people like you in supporting this initiative? Do you have ideas for us? So if you do, go ahead and put those in the chat. We would love to hear your feedback on that. And also, while you're thinking about that, we have our final poll question. We'd really like to hear from you about how you're prioritizing any of the items that I talked about in your giving. So are you thinking more about collaboration? Are you thinking about advocacy? Do you want to do grant making? Are you thinking about how to support communications for nonprofits? Or are you looking at how do you do direct support service or support direct service? Go ahead and check all the ones that you're thinking about. And this is really helpful for us as we think about our work and how to communicate that with the other funders and other donors. Okay, it looks like people are interested in direct service support, advocacy, collaboration. This is fantastic. This is really helpful for us too, as we form more and more about finalizing what we're doing. Great. Thank you all so much. I'll give it one more second. Feel free to add. I'm going to end the poll. And I will share the results so that you can all see that. So it looks like the number one thing people are prioritizing is advocacy. That's fantastic. Followed by collaboration. Thank you so much. And I am going to go ahead and turn it back to Heather.
Okay. A question that we frequently get at ACT is, how can I help? What can I do that's going to make a difference? And so we are part of a national community of funders called the Trust-Based Philanthropy Initiative, and they have some guidelines around what they call meeting the moment. And so I wanted to share these with you all, and I think we can post a link to more information about these funder practices in the chat. But they suggest that donors and funders do a couple of things. One, be in solidarity with nonprofit leaders and nonprofit organizations. So checking in, listening, offering resources, and being an advocate for the work that nonprofits are doing. mobilizing money, so committing to multi-year support, increasing your giving, thinking about reducing the kinds of barriers or restrictions that you may have on your donations. And then finally, nurturing innovation. So listening for where your involvement and support can make a big difference, supporting convenings or considering creative ways to support social impact in the community through mutual aid or other kinds of efforts. Also, you can get involved by supporting ACT directly and giving to the Community Support Initiative. We are raising funds to support this work for next year, for this year and next year, and would love to talk to you about how you can be involved in that. So I think we're going to pause here and see if we have any questions in the chat. So let's see, Emily or Shruti. Oh, I see one question about HUD. So what opportunities does the move of HUD to Alexandria provide? What downsides, if any? Actually, Martha, that's a great question. I am not sure about the details of that. So that's something we'll have to investigate and can definitely get back to you on that question. But thanks for asking. A question, has ICE been active in Alexandria has ICE been as active in Alexandria as they have been in other communities? Yes, we are seeing different reports of immigration enforcement activity. Again, I'm not, you don't have a lot of the specific details to share, but certainly we are seeing, and I know we have a few nonprofit partners on the line here. If any of you have direct information in terms of your experience, please share that in the chat. And Joe, we can certainly get back to you with any additional details. Shruti or Emily, any other questions?
I haven't seen others emerge, but please put them in the chat if you have any. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. A question, what can the small business community do? What can the small business community do to help? Well, the small business community can do a lot to help. One is, I think, check in on your employees. Again, many folks in our community are being affected by these changes in different ways. So, you may have a member of their household who's a federal employee, or maybe they come from a family that has mixed status when it comes to immigration. So check in on your employees and see how they are doing. I think certainly partnering with a local nonprofit is a great way to get engaged. So if you're interested in addressing food insecurity or housing insecurity, whatever the issue might be, there's definitely an organization in Alexandria that is working directly on that. And then certainly reach out to our team. We'd love to be a thought partner for you as you're thinking about how to get more engaged. So thanks for that question. In terms of staff well-being, what do they need? Well, I think a lot of things that staff need is certainly time to focus on their own personal wellness, time to spend more time with their families, all the things that we individually do to rejuvenate. Brandy, what have you heard from some of the nonprofits in terms of ways that they are supporting the well-being of their families?
Yeah, well, I think the similar things to what you said. I mean, some of the ways that we have supported organizations doing this is flexible funding to support well-being. When we did our grants last year, it supported things like more paid leave for people, we also supported copays for people who are going to see counselors. We have supported in the past retreats for teams. Sometimes it's really helpful, like you said, Heather, to have that time and that time together to focus on like what are the big changes that are happening, how can we meet that need, but people are so busy just doing the work that they don't have time to stop. And I would always just say, talking to your nonprofit and the leaders that are there and asking them what they need, and hearing directly from them. If you're in relationship with them, I think they want to hear from donors and other supporters that you're in it with them and that you are committed to supporting them. And we know that can't always be through dollars, but other ways of encouragement or connecting them to other donors.
Great. Thank you, Brandy. Any other questions that folks have?
One of the things that came up is a question around what we're looking to raise in terms of being able to run this community support initiative and fully help the other nonprofits in Alexandria as best we can. So what's our goal?
Oh, I can take that. Do you want me to, Heather?
Yes, thank you.
Our goal to do this work over the next 2 years, we're looking to raise $220,000, and this will help us with the work that we're doing around the convening, the grant making, the communications, and advocacy work that I mentioned earlier.
Great. Well, thank you for all these great questions and for your interest in supporting the Alexandria community and interest in supporting ACT. We do have a few quick organizational announcements that I'd like to share before we wrap up our time together. The first thing I'd like to do is recognize Leanne Napoleon. I know many of you know Leanne as that friendly face that you turn to when you need direct assistance in terms of managing your donor advised fund, or really almost any question that you may have about how you can get involved with ACT or the community. Leanne has always been there. Leanne is embarking on her next professional chapter, and we are so grateful for all the ways that she's contributed to ACT's success over the years. So thank you so much, Leanne, for all you've done for ACT and for our community. I'd also like to use this moment to introduce you to two new team members, Shruti Kaur and Emily Davis, who you've seen on the chat this morning. Shruti is the Development Associate and Emily is our Development Associate Director. Shruti brings a passion for data and service to our team, and she will be assisting with all the detailed behind-the-scenes efforts that enable our donor support and fundraising efforts to be successful. Emily comes to ACT from the Greater Washington Community Foundation and will be working closely with Tricia and the team to grow our donor services and expand the number of families and individuals and companies that partner with ACT on their charitable giving. So welcome, Shruti and Emily. We are so thrilled that you're on the team. And so finally, as we wrap up our time together this morning, I want to introduce you to Anu Varma, ACT board member and chair of the development committee, who is going to round us out here. So Anu?
Hi, thank you so much, Heather. And thank you for such a great session today. I will tell you the information that was packed into your slides is just so enlightening and amazing. And everyone who is registered will get a copy of the slides and the recording. The recording will be on our YouTube page. I really do encourage everyone to share it with friends, families, colleagues. It was literally too much for an hour, and I hope you all just kind of reflect on it. Really wonderful. So as Heather mentioned, I'm Anu Varma. I live in West Alexandria. I'm on the board of ACT. I chair the development committee. But most importantly, I lived here, and then my job took me to California. I never thought I'd move back, but I wish that if I ever did, I would move right back into Alexandria, and life had it that that's exactly what happened. And once I moved back, I really wanted to get engaged. Never thought we'd come upon a moment like today, but as Heather and the team has explained to me, Alexandria comes upon these moments where we're right next to the federal government, and what happens nationally impacts us in particular. So we, she mentioned 2007, 2008. We mentioned COVID. We mentioned government shutdown. These things are unique to us. And when someone says meet the moment, it's more than cliche. It is for us in Alexandria, we're uniquely situated. That meeting the moment is a thing for us. And this community has shown time and again that we're ready to do it. So this quote that Heather seemingly found out of nowhere about, I can't change the wind, but I can change the direction of my sails. I mean, literally, I'm going to use that in parenting for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I do think that we all need to do that. I want to reemphasize that as part of meeting this moment, this Alexandria Community Support Initiative that ACT has launched, this idea of us as a community foundation playing 4 key roles: convening, bringing together. We celebrated Spring to Action. That supported 193 nonprofits across the community, serving various needs. It's the convening. We have the ability to do grant making. We have the ability to spread the message, whatever message is needed for this moment, the comms. And obviously, we've talked about advocacy. And this is advocacy at all levels, federal, state, and local. And this is the idea that there are certain things that we need as a community, and we need a voice. And hopefully you'll all look at our community support initiative in that way. I will say the team is great. You've already heard from Heather and Brandy, and you've met Trisha, and you met the new team members. The ACT team is here for us, all of us. And please do reach out. Please do connect with them. And just know that we're here for you as a nonprofit. We're here for you as a citizen. We're here for you as a business owner. I mean, let's kind of do this together. And that's really the key. And again, I just want to reiterate, thank you for attending today. And please do spread the word, spread the message, take your slides that you're going to get by email and just share them. We're the only way we're just going to get through this moment. And again, we've had moments in years before, and we're going to have moments in years coming, is if we do it together. And I just want to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today. Thank you, Brandy, and the entire ACT team. And thanks to all of you for being part of the conversation. We look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing you in the weeks and months ahead. Take care. Have a great day, everybody.